You talk about these 5 science-based habits for being more charismatic.
Yeah.
I guess the first question is, what is charisma?
Yes.
And then what are these 5 science-based habits that can make me more charismatic as a person? Like, how do I know if I'm charismatic?
You are charismatic, but you lean higher on competence. So let's break it down, okay? So this is not my work. This is the work of Dr. Susan Fiske. This is an instrumental study. It's been repeated many times back in 2002 that found that to be charismatic, you have to be both highly warm and highly competent. Or more importantly, you have to signal high warmth and high competence. And that this makes up 82% of impressions of people. Warmth, trust, likability, friendliness. Competence, power, reliability, capability. So very highly charismatic people, you meet them, you see them, and they are signaling, you can trust me, you like me, and boy, am I reliable and competent at the very same time. So when I say you are charismatic, but you lean very high in competence, which means that people can see you as cold or stoic if you're not showing enough warmth cues. Have you been told that? Intimidating?
Indirectly.
Indirectly, yeah. Right.
People are too scared to say it to me, and I'm joking. But no, I do get that. I think I have like some degree of self-awareness as to how I come across. And I think how you described it is exactly how I come across.
And that's not a bad thing, right? Like, you get to pick your own recipe. Like, I lean a little higher on the warm side. I'm also female. There are differences between men and women. So typically, not always, men default to higher in competence. Women are defaulted to higher in warmth. Typically, not always. This isn't a bad thing, but you should know that if you are trying to come across as warmer on your team, you're trying to inspire more collaboration, you're trying to make more friends, you want to dial up your warmth cues. If you're someone who's interrupted a lot, not taken seriously, people forget meeting you, you need to dial up competence. This is like a thermostat. You can dial up warmth cues and dial up competence cues, and this changes the way people treat you. So I have 5 power cues for competence, and I have 5 warm cues for warmth.
We're going to go through all of those.
Yes.
I saw this wonderful graph which kind of explains it, which I'll put on the screen for anyone that's watching. And this was really, really interesting. There's a danger zone. The danger zone, I'm guessing, is when you're low warmth and low competence.
That's it. Those are those folks that are stoic. If you don't send enough warmth cues, if you don't send enough competence cues, people cannot trust you. They have trouble working with you. They have trouble talking to you. This is the curse of very smart people. Very smart people think, my ideas will stand alone. My book smarts are great. I don't need to communicate these cues. My ideas are enough. That's what happened to Jamie Siminoff in the tank. He did not show enough warmth or competence cues. He relied solely on his ideas and his numbers, and he could not get a deal. So people who want to be taken seriously, you have to show warmth and competence. The other problem with highly competent folks, and you lean higher in competence, so this is for you too, which is, this is directly from the research. Too much competence without enough warmth leaves people feeling suspicious. So no matter how competent you are, no matter how good your ideas are, if you are not showcasing that with warmth, people are skeptical of you. And this is what happens with a lot of my students, is they're like, people don't trust me. They don't believe my ideas. They're skeptical. I get pushback, or I do sales trainings. They can't close. People push back on their numbers. And that is because some part of them is saying, I hear your competence, but you're not giving me enough warmth.
And you be too warm.
You can be absolutely too warm. You can be too warm and too competent. Too warm, you know what that looks like? That's too warm.
Okay.
Okay? Too warm is, so we'll talk about the 5 warmth cues. Too much of any cue is dangerous, right? So too much nodding, too much laughing, too much vocalizations. Those are all too warm, and they make us think this person is a bimbo or a ditz or not competent. That's what happens. We have too much warmth, it takes away from our competence.
Where should we start?
Let's start with the power cues.
Okay, the power cues. So this is competence.
Yes, power cues. Let me get some more power cues. Okay, so we talked about the importance of hand gestures. There is a very good competent hand gesture, which everyone should know if you want to be perceived as higher in competence. It's called the steeple.
Oh, this.
Oh, yes. It's on the cover of my book if you want to see it. Yes. This looks when your hands look like a little steeple. They're kind of relaxed and open.
It's a triangle for anyone that can't. It's kind of like a triangle.
Yep, a triangle. It's a power pose for the hands. Why? If you were doing this pose, you're showing I'm not hiding anything from you. You can still see my palms, but I am very relaxed and poised enough so that I'm keeping my hands together. Now, be careful. Don't drum. This is evil fingers.
Yeah.
This is Mr. Burns. For those of you who know, right?
Yeah.
So it's a nice still steeple. They rated hand gestures in a study, and they found that this was the highest rated hand gesture that leaders made was when they made this gesture. Now, Personally, I don't use this a lot in my interpersonal interactions because it doesn't feel super natural to me. It's funny because we took one picture for my cover photos, and every single picture of me for my cover photos, I was smiling. And my wonderful photographer, Maggie Kirkland, said, Vanessa, can we just do one of you serious? And I was like, but I'm not serious. She's like, just one. Just do your most powerful power cue. And this is the only picture. And that was the one that we chose for it. So it's just funny because it's a very high competence cue. So you can try the steeple, just be careful not to do evil fingers with it. That's a high competence cue.
That picture of you on the front, what is that signaling?
So it's a perfect balance, right? So 1, I have the steeple cue, competence gesture. 2, I'm angled towards you. My body is angled towards you, which is a warmth cue, that's fronting. My toes are angled towards you, which is warmth. I also have a smoldering eye contact look, which is high competence, which we can talk about. And I have an up face, right? I'm not in my resting, bothered face. So that's a slight warmth cue.
That is actually how it makes me feel. There's an element of power, but it's not an intimidating level of power.
Because I balanced it with that warmth.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a welcoming
yay.
Of power, yeah.
Woo, we did it. Now I got to do it for the next one.
So steeple.
Okay, steeple, yeah. Second, this is a weird one. The most important measurement on your entire body is the distance between your earlobe and your shoulder. This distance right here. Watch. If I were to do this in the interview the entire time, if I were to have a very small distance between my earlobe and my shoulder, I would look anxious. I would also have a really hard time giving you vocal power. You would have do you trust me?
No, you look nervous.
Right, I look nervous. There's a direct correlation between confidence and anxiety and the distance between our shoulder and our earlobe. And very quickly, we're trying to just assess someone in the first few seconds of seeing them. We're trying to assess, how confident are you? Can I catch it? We don't like people who are anxious. We don't want to talk to someone like this because we don't want to catch that anxiety, but we do want to talk to someone who has the max distance between their earlobes and their shoulder. So when you're in a first impression, also in your profile pictures, I want a relaxed distance, shoulders down, earlobes out, which is another reason why I like that this is how your table is set up, because it pushes my shoulders down so I have a max distance. That makes me look more confident, but it also makes me feel more confident. There's a look here. So when you do the steeple and then you roll your shoulders down and back, you will begin to feel more confident. Don't you feel good?
What if you raise your head though? Because if I'm trying to get my ears away from my shoulders, I might go like this.
Actually, they're the same distance. So you want to actually keep your chin level. And if you can help it, you don't want to actually look down your nose at someone. It's quite a scornful, judgmental. Yeah. Exactly. So you just noticed it even when I did it. So it's not this, it's just this distance. So maximizing this difference. Okay. Third one. I love eye contact. We all know good eye contact is important. But here's what you might not know about good eye contact. Eye contact is a power move when you look at someone at the end of your sentence. So we're very used to if someone's thinking about something and they're processing something in their head, and I'm telling you that there were 465 gestures in a TED Talk, that is the most important way that I want to showcase something to you. That we like it when someone is actually accessing different memories or areas of their brain, but then when I end my sentence looking right at you, you're like, so highly competent people make eye contact specifically at the end of their sentences to drill a point, and ideally when the other person is saying something important.
Okay, interesting. I just did it then. Yeah. But I do that when I'm doing interviews because I kind of look off into the distance to think a little bit and then I come back to ask.
The worst advice I hear people give, body language experts give, make more eye contact. Make 100% eye contact.
It's awkward.
Actually, in Western cultures, they've studied this. The ideal amount of eye contact is between 60 and 70% of the conversation. If you make over 70% eye contact, it's actually considered a territorial gesture. So if I were to be making 100% eye contact with you, it feels very invasive, very awkward. We like it when someone is processing or gathering information from around. Like if I'm processing something or I'm thinking about something or I'm accessing, all that matters is at the end of my point, I'm looking right at you. And that feels so much more powerful.
Okay, so that's number 3.
Yeah, that's number 3. Yeah.
Okay.
Fourth one of my favorites. It's called a lower lid flex. Lower lid flex is one of the least utilized, but one of my favorite cues. So biologically speaking, when we are trying to see something far away, we harden our lower lids. Like I'm trying to read the titles on your bookshelf, I harden my lower lids. That is because when our eye is trying to see far, it squints to block out the light. Mm-hmm. So you'll see more details in my face when you harden your lower lid at me. So harden your lower lid. If you look at People's Sexiest Men Alive, almost every man in that magazine it's Zoolander, right? Blue Steel, Blue steel is actually just a lower lid flex. That is because when someone is trying to really focus on something and really understand something, their lower lid is flexed as you're doing right now. And boy, oh boy, do we like it when someone is lower lid flexing at us. Because it means you are really trying to understand and see me. So a lower lid flex is a great power cue to use in moderation, right? Nothing too much. That when someone is saying something on a date or in a meeting or a colleague is saying something really important and you want to show them, I am really listening, that lower lid flex shows them I am super focused and intense on you. That is why women find men who do the lower lid flex very sexy because they feel like, ooh, he's really focusing on me. Now, there's a little side note to the lower lid flex. Lower lid flex it's inherently in itself a positive cue. It's a cue of focus, right? If you are in a presentation or a meeting and you say something and someone suddenly lid flexes at you, you might have just said something they're like, really?
Yeah.
So for me, this was a game-changing moment as I was giving a presentation to a bunch of executives. And I said something about oxytocin, which is the hormone of love and cuddle and connection. And he goes, I saw him lower lid flex at me.
But he's also turned his head there.
I don't remember if he turned his head. But all I noticed is that distinctly he went from to
yes.
And I went, does that make sense? Any questions? So if you see a lower lid flex, your best choice is to try to gather more information. That makes sense? All good? Any questions for me? How we feel about this? So I said, any questions for me? And he goes, and I looked right at him. I said, any questions for me? He said, I think they gave my wife oxytocin in labor. Is that the same thing? And it's true that they give a form of oxytocin to induce women in labor. That's how strong oxytocin is. That in high doses, it will put women into labor. It's a form, it's called Pitocin. I said, you're absolutely right. In medical settings, they can give synthetic forms of oxytocin to push women into labor. That was a moment for me because one, as I realized I was able to stop the skepticism and the confusion right there before we moved on to anything else. And now when I teach oxytocin, I say, in social settings, oxytocin means this, because in medical settings, it means something different. So noticing that lower lid flex is incredibly important for you to understand where you might have a hint of skepticism or a hint of confusion. If you're in a sales meeting or a presentation, you want to make sure you have addressed whatever that person is flexing about before you move on.
Super interesting. In that example you give there as well, had you not investigated that lower lid flex, you might have also thought something you said was wrong and lost your confidence, and that can spiral into, closing off and becoming a worse presenter.
This is why I thought people hated me and I hated people. So for my folks that are listening who are like, I hate people, and I get it, I was misreading cues as skeptical or negative of me when it could have been neutral or curiosity or trying to understand something better. If you can give these a try, it will help you more deeply understand people, which might help you like them more. Ready for the fifth one?
I'm ready for the fifth.
Okay, the fifth one. This is a vocal cue. So we talked a lot about body language cues, but vocal cues are incredibly important. Vocal cues tell someone how you are feeling about them and how you feel about yourself. One of the biggest ones is an accidental question inflection. A question inflection is when we go up at the end of our sentence, so it sounds like we're asking a question, even if we're actually using a statement. The research has actually looked at what the brain does when it hears an accidental question inflection. If we are listening to someone and we hear them accidentally use the question inflection, our brain goes from listening to scrutinizing. Why? Our brain wonders, why did you ask me that? Liars typically accidentally use the question inflection. If I say to my daughter, did you take the cookie from the cookie jar? And she goes, no.
Yeah.
Liars are asking, do you believe this? So we have noticed, we did a massive experiment in our lab where we had people play 2 truths and a lie with us. So share 2 truths about themselves and a lie. And we found overwhelmingly one of the biggest patterns, there's a couple of different patterns, but one of the biggest ones was that liars asked their lie statement. So like it would sound like this. Here, you can play with me and I'll add the question inflection to one. I love dogs. I live in Austin, Texas, and I love cilantro.
Oh, yeah. You don't like cilantro.
No. It's like a crime against humanity. Like, why do people put cilantro on anything? So we noticed people asked the lie because they were asking, do you believe this? So our brain is very adept at this. If we hear the accidental question inflection used, we go, wait a minute, is someone lying to me? The biggest mistake that salespeople make is they get through their entire pitch and they ask their number. So it sounds like this. Hi, we'd love to do business with you. We'd love to have your project, and the cost of this service is $5,000. If you ask your number, you are begging people to negotiate with you. If you are asking for a raise or you are asking for a certain salary and you ask it, you are signaling to the other person, I don't really believe this number and you shouldn't either. So the power cue, number 5 power cue, is using the downward inflection.